Greetings, UPC family. I hope you are well and caring for one another. We are in this season of Lent. This is the fourth Sunday in the season of Lent, and it has certainly shifted from a choice to an awkward way of life inflicted upon us. And in the midst of this time, when we probably feel more lost than anything, I invite you to hear these ancient and hopeful words from the book of Deuteronomy, beginning in the 4th chapter. So now, Israel, give heed to the statutes and ordinances that I am teaching you to observe, so that you may live to enter and occupy the land that the Lord, the God of your ancestors, is giving you. See, just as the Lord my God has charged me, I now teach you statutes and ordinances for you to observe in the land that you are about to enter and occupy. You must observe them diligently, for this will show your wisdom and discernment to the peoples who, when they hear all these statutes, will say, surely this great nation is a wise and discerning people. For what other great nation has a God so near to it as the Lord our God is whenever we call to him? And what other great nation has statutes and ordinances as just as this entire law that I am setting before you today? But take care and watch yourselves closely, so as neither to forget the things that your eyes have seen, nor let them slip from your mind all the days of your life. Make them known to your children and your children's children. If you remember back to Epiphany Sunday in early January, we distributed star words in worship in the spirit of the Magi who followed the star in the sky that led them to the Christ child. You were invited to choose a word to guide you during the year. To reflect on it, wrestle with it, ponder what God may be speaking to you through it. And sure, it's a bit cheesy, I admit, a word on a star-shaped piece of paper that's supposed to have some kind of special power. But I also wonder if God maybe speaks through simple things more than we realize. Maybe even a word on a piece of paper can be a timely and tangible sign of God's presence in our lives. Especially since you can't choose your word, but you have to let the word choose you. In a way, it's as if you are letting a simple word do something like what Moses tells his people: take care and watch yourselves closely. At the time, I got a nervous chuckle out of the word that chose me. I got the word lost. I readily admit that it seemed a bit worrisome for your pastor to be guided by the word lost. It felt like God was messing with me, which God has a knack for doing. And yet here we all are, 2.5 months later, disconnected and lost because of a global pandemic. It feels like we are 1,000 miles from nowhere. We feel lost in the daily deluge of news and information. We feel lost in a sea of fear, anxiety, and loneliness, isolation. We are lost just trying to figure out how to connect with the people we love. We are lost adjusting our lives in 100 different ways. We feel lost in just the idea of going to a grocery store. I feel lost trying to figure out how to be a pastor. Most of ministry is just showing up, and we are living in days when nobody can show up to anything. I feel lost trying to learn new technology to do ministry in this season of separation. I feel lost trying to force my children to do social distancing when I don't fully understand it myself. I feel lost preaching to a camera in an empty sanctuary. Yes, this will pass at some point, and we'll somehow get through it, even though our lives will probably be much different. But right now, it just feels like we are lost, asking over and over again, perhaps, "Oh God, where are you now?" What do we do in this daily changing wilderness? Well, maybe the words that Moses spoke to the Hebrew people in their own wilderness, offer us some kind of clue. As Moses stands on the banks of the Jordan River, ready to leave the wilderness and enter the promised land on the other side, the instruction he gives the children of Israel is simple. He says, "Take care and watch yourselves closely, so as neither to forget the things that your eyes have seen, nor to let them slip from your mind all the days of your life." Maybe Moses is also saying, you've been lost in the wilderness, but the wilderness isn't forever. Wherever you are, pay attention to what God has given you, what God has told you, what God has shown you, how God is with you. And what God gave them through the law was God essentially saying to them, I love you, I am with you, don't give in to fear, I am your home, so stay home with me. Maybe being lost isn't such a terrible thing after all. When we admit that we're all lost in this together, things change. We change. What's important to us changes. How we see each other and the world we live in changes. The choices we make, the ways we listen, how we live and love all changes. Perhaps it resets in a way when we take care and watch ourselves closely. It seems before you and I can fully turn outward, maybe we need to turn inward for a time. So as Moses reminds his people, let his words also remind you that we are all wrapped up in the holy purposes of a big God who is closer, much closer than we think. A God who gave us life and gives us a story that makes us hopeful people. A God who is always doing a new thing, even now in the lostness of our lives, in the world around us, in this land, at this time. Taking care is remembering that we are always in the care of God. Watching ourselves closely is remembering that we are watched closely by God. For God so loved the world that God insisted on making a home in this world with us. For God so loves the world that God keeps creating paths through the wilderness. And while the ground beneath us is indeed shifting, there is a ground within us that is unchanging. So, my friends, take care and watch yourselves closely as beloved children of God, a God who always carries us through the wilderness to the other side. The peace of Christ be with you.